Chant the four great Bodhisattva vows. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to help them all. Four great Bodhisattva vows. There, that's better. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to help them all. Delusions are countless. We vow to see through them all. Opportunities to awaken are infinite. We vow to embrace them all. The Buddha way is endless. We vow to embody it. Okay, let's start with our 15 minutes of seated meditation. We chant the Gatha on opening the sutras. This Dharma, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, is rarely encountered, even in hundreds of thousands of millions of ages. Now we see it, hear it, hold and maintain it. May we completely realize the true mind of all Buddhas. All right, so sit comfortably, and we'll be getting the Dharma tonight from our brother Minwi.
Thank you, Venerable Unsan. And it's good to be with you guys tonight. As I thought about what to talk about tonight, there's a lot going on in the world. And I wondered, should I talk about what's going on in the world, how Buddhists react to it? And I decided no. I thought back to my study days when I was studying the Pali Canon, and in the greater discourse on emptiness, or the Mahasunyata Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses, the Buddha says when we meditate, if we think about standing, we should stand and meditate while we stand. If we think about sitting, we should be sitting when we're meditating. If we think about talking, then we should talk about good things. And we don't need to be talking about politics and kings and princes and wars and violence, and talk about things you need to talk about. So I'm taking this opportunity tonight to talk about things I think we need to talk about. And as we come from the lineage of Seung San, I was reminiscent of Seung San's teaching. He taught in America from the 70s until he died in the early 2000s, 2007 or 8, if I remember. And when he was asked, what do you teach? He said, I've spent a career in America teaching one thing: don't know. And I've always thought about that. And, one of the first things I learned when I started sitting Zen with the Zen group in Seung San's tradition was one of the methods of meditation that I was taught was Seung San's method, which when you sit there, you breathe in, you say, what is this? And you breathe out and say, don't know. And that never really sank into me very well. I always heard that story, but it never sank into me what it was I was supposed to be saying that I didn't know. But now, having done this for many years, I have a better idea about that don't know mind. And so that's one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. As I mentioned to you guys last week when we did our little question and answer newbie presentations with Venerable Unsan, Zen's had a very positive effect on me in learning how to overcome my PTSD, which I suffered following the Bali bombing in October of 2002, which hit me very hard. At the time, I was a diplomat working in Indonesia. And the truth is, it was my job to go to Bali and dig through the body bags and try to identify the Americans who were killed. Had lots of experiences there. Some people, we were identified by the passport that was in their pocket. Some people, I had to ask their parents to send me copies of their dental records or pictures of whatever tattoos or jewelry they may have had. But I spent a lot of time in the morgue, unzipping body bags, trying not to throw up, and trying to find these lost, mostly children, for their loved ones. In a couple of cases, I was looking for spouses. And this had a lasting effect on my psyche. Um, as you may or may not imagine, digging through body bags all the time when you're not a trained professional in that, it can be pretty traumatic. And at the time, I didn't think so, but it really sank into me later. Anyway, um, as I began to study meditation and as kind of an escape is what it really was for me at first, was escape from my mind. uh, I began to better understand um, how to put things behind me and how to live in the present that the Buddha taught all of us. And I'm reminiscent of a T-shirt that one of my friends bought for me one time. Um, and it's a little irreverent, but I figure in Zen things are irreverent often. I know things are irreverent in Zen because one of the first koans that I heard was in Wumen's um, No Gate Gateway, when he said, when the Zen master was asked by the student, the Zen master was walking out of the toilet, and the student said, "Zen master, what is Buddha?" And off the top of his head was a dry shit stick. Um, so I learned that irreverence in Zen was there a long time ago. And so when my friend bought me a T-shirt that said, they showed a picture of the Buddha, and he was teaching a bunch of monks, and he says, "All right, you mofo's, you got to let that shit go." I knew right away what he meant. And as irreverent as that sounds, part of what we're trying to do in Sung San's method of teaching us is how to let things go and not carry them around with us, and how to live in a moment of doubt. That doubt of don't know. Now, in the Chan tradition, not transliterated as we often do between Chan and English, and which we call Zen or whatever, but in the Chan tradition, they have this idea called Huoto, or Wato, I guess is how it's sometimes pronounced in Zen circles in America, which Hua basically means the word, and To means the head or the basic meaning. So there's this idea of that chief meaning of the word in Huato. But Huato is what Sung San was teaching. He was teaching, don't know. So let me tell you a little bit of story about a Zen master and his student. So there was a Zen master and a student who were living on top of a mountain, and they decided that it was springtime and it was time for them to go and visit another monastery, and they were going to go down the mountain and go to the other monastery, but it was a couple of days journey away. So they headed down the mountain, and they got to the foot of the mountain where there was a river, and it had been raining very hard, and the river was flooded. And ordinarily this was an easy place to cross, but because of the rain, it was a little more treacherous to cross. And there on the banks of the river, they met this young woman. She was a married woman, and she had left her husband's home because it was an emergency at her parents' home. One of her parents had passed away or something, and she was trying to get home, but she couldn't cross the river. And so the old monk says, "Here, climb on my back and I'll carry you across the river." And because in Chinese tradition at the time, monks and nuns were kind of considered holy people and not ordinary people, she trusted the old man, the old Zen master. And so she climbed on his back and she crossed over the river with him. And the student was a little surprised, and he looked at the Zen master like, "What have you done?" And the Zen master says, "Student, is there a problem?" And the student said, "No, master." And they kept walking. And they walked for a while, and finally the student got up enough nerve to ask the teacher. He said, "Master, you've told us all this time that a monk is not supposed to go near women, and yet you carried that woman across the river." And the Zen master looked at him and started laughing. And he says, I carried her for 3 minutes and you've carried her for all this time in your mind. And the young student stopped for a moment and he realized he never let it go. So that teaching that this monk was not supposed to be in contact with a woman was a hang-up point for this young student. And he was carrying this idea in his mind for miles and miles as they walked until he finally got up the nerve to ask the teacher. And the teacher was like, I let that go long ago. I didn't have that attachment to this rule that you're so worried about. You got to learn to let it go as well. And so I tell you that story because when we're trying to enter into this one mind of Huatoa, or this don't know mind, as Sung San would call it, we have to learn to let things go. We have to learn to, all these troubles that were in our past don't exist now. They're in the past. And how do we live with them now? We live with them now by letting them go. And so this idea of sitting with this don't know mind can come in a couple of forms. As Sung San would teach, ask yourself, what is this don't know? One of Shen Yang's, the Taiwanese Chan master, Shen Yang, who you may have read some of his books before. Maybe you've heard of Jimmy Gu. He's a famous Chan teacher in Tallahassee, Florida. He writes lots of books and stuff too. Guo Gu is his Dharma name. He's in that same lineage of Shen Yang. And Shen Yang would ask his students when they were practicing, he would startle them and say, who's carrying around that corpse? To make you think, this is just a dead body, so who it is that's carrying it around? Or who is this after death? Right? Who is this I after death? Who is this I before I was born? These questions that lead one to say, don't know. Don't know. Because that's the don't know mind that Sung San taught. That's the don't know mind that the Chan masters of old called Huatoa. And so as we sit in meditation, and this is actually a more difficult form of meditation, according to most Zen masters, that when one sits in just counting breaths, or sits in a samatha or vipassana type of meditation, we're constantly noting and following sources and always concentrating on that number of breaths that we're on, or the in breath and the out breath. And Huatoa, we're attempting to let it all go. You recognize it when it comes, but you just let it go. I heard there was a Zen master who was also in the Sung San tradition, and he said once to me, he says, when we meditate, our mind should be like an open door, with an open door in the back and an open door in the front. And thoughts will come in and thoughts will go out. We just let them go. We don't invite them for tea. And so when we're sitting here practicing this don't know mind, the idea is that we just let the thoughts come and go. In Vipassana, we note them. Leg pain, leg pain, leg pain, neck pain, back pain, itch, ear. Small things like that. You just note them until they go away, and you continue to focus on them. And the Huatoa type of meditation, you just let it go. You don't concentrate on it. You just let it go. And for someone like me who suffered from PTSD for many years, learning to let go of the past is an important step in learning to live in the present. People who have PTSD, or maybe depression or anxiety, are often focused on something that happened in the past. We worry about it. We have dreams about it. We become hypervigilant or whatever. but it's always in our minds. And the thing we have to do is we have to learn to let it go. Now, there was also another koan who said, there was a koan where a master, where a young student had climbed up in a tree. And he climbed up in the tree and he was hanging by both hands. And the master was down below him and said, okay, well, let go with one hand. So he let go with his right hand, and he's still hanging on by his left hand. And then he said, okay, now you got to let go with your left hand. And he let go with his left hand, but he bit a hold of the branch with his teeth and he couldn't let go. And he said, now why did Bodhidharma come from the west? And he knew if he answered, he was going to fall out of the tree. But if he didn't answer, the master was going to beat him with his stick, as Sun San would say, I'll give you 30 strikes with my stick. And so here he was, stuck in a tree, biting it with his teeth, and he was expected to answer. What was he supposed to do? So the master asked the student, he says, in the koan, master asked the student, he says, so what was the young student supposed to do? To which the student said, never climb up that tree in the first place. And that's the other thing about the Huatua mind, and also letting things go, is don't go down that path. Those of us who suffered PTSD, for example, we could find this dark space in our heads that we could go down anytime. We could go down that path to remembering traumatic events, to feelings, to whatever. And when you head down that path, it's hard to come back. So you don't climb up that tree. And that's the story here of letting things go. Don't climb up the tree. You don't need to. Just live in that don't know life. Live in that don't know mind. And when we do that, we don't have attachments to things. We don't have attachments to our past. We don't have attachments to a dharma. We don't have attachments to a set teaching. We don't have attachments to a statue that may be behind us. When I first came into Zen and I would hear that koan, what is Buddha, a dried shit stick? I thought it was telling me that they were calling Sakyamuni Buddha a dried shit stick. I didn't understand that they were saying ordinariness, just ordinary mind. Everything is Buddha. But that's what we learn when we learn the don't know mind. We learn ordinariness is Buddha. And Buddha is in me. And all I have to do is recognize that one mind. And then I am Buddha. That's the teaching of Zen. That's what we try to wake up to. And that's what's available to us when we let go of the past, live in the present, and recognize that ordinary mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Minwei. We'll resume with our next period of meditation, 15 minutes. We'll chant the Heart Sutra. Mahaprajna Paramita Hridaya Sutra Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the Prajna Paramita, perceives that all five skandhas are empty and is saved from all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. That which is form is emptiness. That which is emptiness, form. The same is true of feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They do not appear or disappear, are not tainted or pure, do not increase or decrease. Therefore in emptiness, no form, no feelings, perceptions, impulses, consciousness, no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no color, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realm of eyes, and so forth, until no realm of mind, consciousness, no ignorance, and also no extinction of it, and so forth, until no old age and death, and also no extinction of them, no suffering, no origination, no stopping, no path, no cognition, also no attainment, with nothing to attain. The bodhisattva depends on prajna paramita, and the mind is no hindrance. Without any hindrance, no fears exist. Far apart from every perverted view, one dwells in nirvana. In the three worlds, all Buddhas depend on prajna paramita and attain anuttara samyak sambodhi. Therefore know that prajna paramita is the great transcendent mantra, is the great bright mantra, is the utmost mantra, is the supreme mantra, which is able to relieve all suffering and is true, not false. So proclaim the prajna paramita mantra. Proclaim the mantra which says gate gate para gate parasamgate bodhisvaha. Gate gate para gate parasamgate bodhisvaha. Gate gate para gate parasamgate bodhisvaha. It's at this point that we have been making personal dedications of merit. I have some names already prepared. I'll leave a space for you to add in whomever you might like. All sentient beings are one seamless body and pass quickly from birth to death. We remember those who cared for us and are gone, those who are ill, those who are at war, who are hungry and who are in pain. May they heal and have peace. We especially dedicate this service to Wanji Dharma, Mike Gingy Wood, Dominda Pereira, Barry, Merle Kodo Boyd. Is there anyone you'd like to mention right now? Okay. All beings in the 10 directions, subject to the greed, hatred, and delusions of themselves and others. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, Maha Prajna Paramita. Life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly by and opportunities to awaken are easily lost. Strive to realize your true nature and do not squander your time by night or day. Just extinguish the candles. And thank you much for joining us tonight. Stop that. And we'll stop